Yeah, Cooper, you and I have probably talked about this like every week the entire year, but now we get to talk about it on air. The Sunshine State. Bud always puts out the Sunshine State scorecard. It is must-read material for a lot of folks. I think partially because you got a lot of FSU, Miami, and Florida fans out there. But I started to realize a little while ago, as the playoff expansion conversation cranked up, I'm not so sure expansion is the key to parity in this sport and balancing it out competitively as much as these schools keeping their talent in state is. Because you watched Alabama for a while and Ohio State and Clemson just dominate. Then you pull up starting 22. Florida, 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 Florida. And if those kids stay home, not necessarily by the dozens, but just a couple at a time, you never know what kind of dent it could make in the national picture. So you have mentioned a couple of times you think it's an imperative 24 hours for Billy Napier and the entire staff at Florida. Let's start with the Gators. Walk me through your thinking there.
A little bit of a house of cards is kind of what I'm thinking. DJ Lagway truly has a chance to be the best player in the country. We have him right now ranked number 4, the number 2 quarterback in the country. He has to ace his final exam for the Under Armour All-American game coming up here in Orlando in a couple of weeks. Outside of that, the guy was just spectacular. So the reason I talk about him, he is the linchpin for Billy Napier going forward. They're 11-14 over 2 years. They've been really disappointing on the field. I talked about proof of concept earlier, why players look around this time of year, why they're looking for different landing spots. We talked about Xavier Filsaime. We talked about some of these other guys as well. Naj Johnson goes to Georgia. Demonte Waller goes to Auburn. Wardell Mack goes to Texas, right? Florida has done everything right. We talked about that support staff, $7 million invested in them. From a talent identification evaluation standpoint, Florida's been dynamite, but they have to get these guys across the finish line. That's what that comes down to. So the 3 guys I'm looking at, Lagway, McCray, Amaris Williams, there's buzz around all of them. They have to sign those guys. I think Florida fans, Billy Napier collectively, can really breathe a sigh of relief if you get those 3 guys across the finish line, but that one guy you have to have is DJ Lagway. And the biggest thing for Florida going forward, they have to get past themselves. They have to win games on the field. That's the big thing for Florida. If they do that, sky's the limit in terms of what they can do recruiting.
I know a lot of people. I mean, we got thousands and thousands tuned in today, and I think a lot of people may not be glued into the day-to-day in recruiting. We get a big influx of viewers on this day. I don't think people can appreciate fully, who just casually watch recruiting, how tumultuous the last year has been at Florida, and especially the last few weeks leading up to today. And you've got that, and then you juxtapose it with Florida State. And Florida State under Mike Norvell, when he first got in there, I thought they've put on a clinic this entire time of leaning heavy in portal to basically get off the ground as quickly as they could. But man, they have killed it in high school recruiting, and right now, today, they're in the top 5 mix, and it's a perfect, to me, testament of how to walk into a program that needs rebuilding and do it on the fly in the portal NIL era, because I think a lot of folks, when Norvell and his staff first got there, looked at it and said, I guess they're just going to be portal reliant. Well, that's not what they did at all. They didn't pull a Mel Tucker at Michigan State. They did it out of necessity, but this class looks insane on paper.
Yeah, we talked about ascending players, right? We talked about DJ Lagway ascending up the board. What about ascending programs? You look at Florida State, you talked about the recipe. How about this? The transfer portal, you go back, you look at what they've done. The 23rd ranked class, the 10th ranked class, the 6th ranked class. Now you have the on-field success. What do you do with that? You got to parlay that into success on the recruiting trail. Here are the last 3 years for Mike Norvell: 23rd, 20th, 19th. This year, 4th. That's how you get it done. 13 other 23 players that are committed to Florida State right now, they're from the Sunshine State. So they're doing a tremendous job there. Guys like KJ Bolden going into Georgia as well. 6 players committed from the state of Georgia. I love their recipe. And here's the thing. You have to consistently adapt and evolve. What your plan might be on day 1 when you walk into a program is going to be completely different than what it looks like year 4, right? You have to account for the success that you've had on the field. You get to take this high school recruiting and then still, sprinkle in a couple guys like Marvin Jones, a former 5-star coming over from Georgia. They've done a tremendous job through the transfer portal, getting some of the best pass rushers in the country. They really kind of have the yin and the yang now of, hey, this is what we're going to be via the transfer portal, and now let's build off of that, be aggressive in high school because we got the wind at our back.
Talk about Bolden for a second. KJ Bolden, for those unfamiliar, 5-star safety, number 1 at his position in the country. Got him at 15th. Overall prospect nationally. been committed to FSU for a while. There had been some Auburn buzz. Steve Wilfong has talked a lot about this lately. Georgia getting in the mix. How do you feel about him as we kind of start the day?
Well, it sounds like Georgia right now is kind of the team picking up some steam, talking to some people on the KJ Bolden recruitment. Just me. That's not really my job or my lane, but it feels like Georgia is kind of surging here late. But this is a guy, three-phase player out of Beaufort. He checks every box. And, sometimes you can get a little bit of fatigue of the guys that have been ranked inside the top 32 for a long time. We don't have that with KJ Bolden. Every live exposure he's aced. When the pads and the lights are the brightest, this is where this guy really shines. So I love the player that KJ Bolden is. And you talk about it, right? Florida State, Auburn, Georgia, some of the best teams in the country coming after KJ Bolden. This is a safety. This is a position that traditionally over the last couple years has been devalued, but that just goes to show what type of athlete that he is. That all these teams are in the mix right now trying to get him to sign on the dotted line. He's a game changer, and I think a guy that can play day one for any of these programs.
Broad strokes question. 2 cycles ago, we had Malachi Starks, immediate impact guy at Georgia. Last year, Caleb Downs from Georgia goes to Alabama. Bolden, how does he compare to those two as a player?
Well, that's high praise, right? Malachi Starks is one of the best I think we've seen coming out, the number 5 player overall, one of the best athletes in the country. Caleb Downs may be the most complete player we have seen in a long time. I think he's somewhere in between those guys, right? I think from a physical standpoint, KJ Bolden can play early. I think from a defensive back standpoint, he's still learning the position. This guy played a lot of receiver as well. So I think physically, yes, he can step on the field. I think he's got to find his right spot. He might play a little bit of nickel. He might play closer to the line of scrimmage. You could also play him in the deep third. His position versatility is the most beautiful thing about KJ Bolden. He's going to find a way to get on the football field.
I want to find someone whose face lights up the way yours lights up when you talk about KJ Bolden. You don't need to respond. That's just a statement I want to make. Hey, what about Miami? So we're sitting here right now. It is 10:37 on the East Coast, and Miami is with the number 6 class in the country, still with a lot of movement. They're one of those programs where you literally want to see the sun go down on this day before you think they're done. What do we expect? What do we think about the class right now?
Well, think about this for Miami. This would be the first time in the 24/7 sports era, 2010, that Miami would have a back-to-back top 10 class. That's why they brought Mario Cristobal there. That's why he's in Coral Gables. You think about what they've done. They're another team super active in the state of Florida. And listen, no state puts out more players to the NFL per capita than the state of Florida, right? So you think about that. You don't have to go far from home. That's one of the attractive things about the job. 12 of their 26 commitments from the Sunshine State. Zaquan Patterson, let's start at the top with him, another safety we really like out of Chaminade Madonna, a guy super versatile, kind of similar to KJ Bolden a little bit. JoJo Trader, just a football player when you really think about him, can do a lot of different things. He'll play receiver for Miami and the Canes. Chance Robinson, a dude from St. Thomas Aquinas, big physical guy, not going to blow you away with speed, but a guy that I also think can play early, just a really mature football player. Then Artavius Jones, I mean, a two-way guy out of the state of Florida, big defensive tackle. I think he's going to have to shed a little bit of weight, but a position versatile guy. I will tell you this, over the last 2 years, I don't think I've been more impressed with the position coach recruiting-wise than Jason Taylor. Absolute home run for Mario Cristobal. That guy's been a killer. We know what Mario Cristobal can do on the offensive line. The fact they have done what they have done defensively, you think about Ruben Bain last year, some of the guys they brought in, and then you think about what they're bringing in this class. There's a chance they get Armando Blunt from Florida State, right? We talked about the Cuban coffee and coffees for closers. We'll see if Miami can get that done. But Jason Taylor has been outstanding. Marquise Lightfoot, another edge from Illinois that we absolutely love. So if you're going to get it done, if you're Miami, it's got to start in the trenches, and they've absolutely done a great job there.
You at UCF, really quickly, sitting at 29th. It's a really interesting program. Just made the jump to what was formerly known as Power 5. I'll let you decide what you want to call that now, but a Big 12 member. Top 30, not done. What do we think about the class?
Big 12's wide open. They were 50th last year. So when you look at the Big 12, who's the team? Texas Tech is the only team inside the top 25. You have TCU right behind them, and then you have UCF. You think about UCF and what they're going to be. I think they've done a really good job establishing who they are as they transition to the Big 12. The other thing about this, they took 18 transfers last year. I talked about that stat, right? Taking over 15 transfers and how to manage your roster. I think they have a chance to be one of the best bounce-back programs in the country right there in the state of Florida, now in the Power 5 and the Big 12. I like what Gus Malzahn's done. I think the arrow's pointing up there.